They used to call me the calculator at the FBI, not because I was good with numbers, though I was, but because once I started adding things up, someone was going to prison. I spent 42 years as a forensic accountant, and I could smell financial fraud the way a bloodhound smells fear. So when my son David called me on a Tuesday morning in November and said, "Mom, we really need to update your will," I knew something was wrong. The same way I knew when a CEO's expense reports didn't match his calendar, or when a shell company's address was actually a Starbucks in Delaware. "David," I said, stirring my coffee, "I updated my will 3 years ago, with Patterson and Lee. You know that." "Yeah, but Mom, things change. Jessica and I found this really great lawyer, very experienced with estate planning. He can see you Thursday at 2. Jessica, my daughter-in-law of 6 years. The woman who posted 17 Instagram stories a day about luxury lifestyle and manifesting abundance while my son's business was circling the drain. "What's his name?" I asked. A pause. "Too long. Richard Palmer. He comes highly recommended." I pulled out my laptop. Yes, I use a laptop, and no, I don't need help with it, and typed in Richard Palmer, attorney, Seattle, while David kept talking about how important it was to protect my legacy. The results made my stomach drop. Richard Palmer, Esquire, specializing in estate planning, conservatorship proceedings, and competency evaluations. 3 disciplinary complaints filed with the state bar, all dismissed on technicalities. And buried on page 4 of Google, a blog post from an elder advocacy group. Warning: attorneys who prey on families. Palmer's name was 3rd on the list. "Thursday at 2 sounds perfect," I said, my voice steady. "Text me the address." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table in my penthouse, overlooking Elliott Bay, the penthouse I bought with my own money in 1998, now worth $3.8 million, and I did what I always did when I suspected fraud. I started documenting everything. I pulled David's financial records. I still had access. He'd made me a co-signer on his business account when he started his tech company 5 years ago, and he'd never bothered to remove me. Probably forgot I was there, like everyone forgets about the quiet woman in the corner taking notes. What I found made me want to cry. My son, my brilliant, sweet boy who used to bring me drawings of robots and ask me to check his math homework, had lost everything. His company was $850,000 in debt. His personal accounts were overdrawn. And there, in the transaction history, a pattern I'd seen 100 times before. Regular withdrawals, always just under $10,000, always to cash, always on Friday nights. Gambling, the same addiction that had destroyed his father. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the transfer I found dated 2 weeks ago, $15,000 from David's account to Palmer Legal Group, with a memo that said, "Retainer, MC Competency Evaluation. MC, Margaret Chen, me." They weren't taking me to update my will. They were taking me to have me declared incompetent. I closed my laptop and walked to my window. The Seattle skyline was gray and drizzling, the way it always is in November. I thought about calling David right then, confronting him, asking him how he could do this to me. But I knew the answer. Desperation makes people do terrible things, and Jessica was the kind of woman who could turn desperation into a weapon. So instead, I made a phone call to my old colleague at the FBI field office. "Marcus," I said when he picked up, "it's Maggie. I need a favor." Thursday arrived with the same gray drizzle. I dressed carefully. A simple navy dress, pearl earrings, my wedding ring. I wanted to look like someone's sweet elderly mother, not a woman who'd spent 4 decades taking down white-collar criminals. I also wore my smartwatch, the one my granddaughter had given me for Christmas, the one that could record video and audio with a double tap on the screen. David picked me up at 1:30. He was driving Jessica's white Mercedes, the one with the leather seats that cost more than his monthly revenue. He looked terrible, thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. "You okay, sweetheart?" I asked as I got in. "Yeah, Mom. Just tired. The business, you know." He couldn't meet my eyes in the rearview mirror. Jessica was in the passenger seat, wearing all black, a black blazer, black dress, black heels, like she was going to a funeral. My funeral. "Hi, Margaret," she said, turning around with that smile I'd never trusted. "Too many teeth. You look lovely. Thank you, dear. You look very prepared. Something flickered across her face, but she turned back around. The law office was in a converted brownstone in Capitol Hill, the kind of building that tried too hard to look prestigious. Brass nameplate, mahogany door, a reception area with leather chairs that wheezed when you sat in them. The receptionist, a young woman named Emily according to her nameplate, looked up with practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Chen? Mr. Palmer is ready for you. Your family can wait here." "Oh, I'd like them to come with me," I said, "for support." Emily glanced at a paper on her desk, a script. I realized and said, "Mr. Palmer prefers to meet with clients individually first, just to establish rapport." David started to stand, but I touched his arm. "It's fine, honey. I'll just be a few minutes." I double-tapped my smartwatch as I walked down the hall. Richard Palmer's office was exactly what I expected. Too much dark wood, too many diplomas on the wall, half of them from schools I'd never heard of, and a leather chair that put him 6 inches higher than his clients. Palmer himself was 60-ish, silver hair, expensive suit, and the kind of smile that bankruptcy attorneys perfect over years of pretending to care. "Mrs. Chen," he said, not standing. "Please, sit down." I sat, arranging my purse on my lap, my hands folded. Sweet elderly mother. That's what he needed to see. "Now, David has asked me to help with some estate planning," Palmer began, pulling out a legal pad. "But before we discuss that, I need to ask you a few questions. Just routine, you understand. To make sure we're all on the same page." "Of course. Can you tell me what day it is?" "Thursday, November 14th, 2024. "And where are we right now?" "Your office on Capitol Hill. 15th Avenue, I believe, though I'm better with numbers than street names." He made a note. "Can you tell me your date of birth?" "The 3rd of March, 1956. I'm 68 years old, though I feel 35, most days." I gave him a little laugh. He didn't laugh back. "Mrs. Chen, do you know why you're here?" "David said you could help update my will." "Yes. And do you remember what you had for breakfast this morning?" The question landed like a punch. I could see it now, the strategy. He was going to document that I couldn't remember simple things. Breakfast, where I put my keys, what year it was, build a case that I was declining. "Oatmeal with blueberries," I said, "and coffee. 2 cups, because I was up late." "What were you doing up late?" "Reading. I'm rereading The Pelican Brief. I always loved John Grisham." Another note. "Mrs. Chen, I'm going to say 3 words, and I want you to remember them. Can you do that?" The words are apple, table, penny. Can you repeat those back to me? Apple, table, penny. Good. Now, can you tell me who the current president is? We went on like this for 10 minutes. Questions designed to sound casual but carefully constructed to test memory, reasoning, orientation. I answered each one perfectly, watching Palmer's frustration grow. Finally, he leaned back. "Mrs. Chen, I'm going to be honest with you. Your son is very worried about you." "Is he?" "He says you've been forgetful lately, missing appointments, repeating yourself. He's concerned that you might not be able to manage your finances anymore." I let the words sit in the air for a moment. Then I said, "Can I tell you a story, Mr. Palmer?" He blinked. "I suppose?" In 1987, I was assigned to a case in Chicago, a nursing home administrator who was embezzling from residents. Small amounts, a few hundred here and there, nothing that would trigger audits. But it added up. Over 3 years, he stole $2.3 million from people who trusted him. Do you know how we caught him? Palmer's face had gone very still. "He got greedy," I continued. "Started taking bigger amounts. Got sloppy with the paperwork. And when we looked closely at his finances, we found something interesting. He had a lawyer friend. Someone who would help families declare their elderly parents incompetent, get conservatorship, and then, well, money has a way of disappearing when the right people are watching." "Mrs. Chen, I don't see what." "The 3 words you asked me to remember were apple, table, penny. You wanted to see if I'd forget." I opened my purse and pulled out a manila folder. "But I never forget numbers, Mr. Palmer. That's why they called me the calculator." I slid the folder across his desk. He opened it. I watched the color drain from his face. Inside was everything. Palmer's bank records for the last 6 months. Marcus had come through, as always. 17 cases of competency evaluations, all following the same pattern. Meet with the elderly person. Document concerns. Recommend conservatorship. File with the court. And then, within 3 months, significant transfers from the conservatorship account to shell companies that Palmer controlled. $1.2 million. That's what he'd stolen in 6 months. But that wasn't all. I'd included David's records too. The $15,000 retainer. The emails between Jessica and Palmer, yes, I'd accessed David's email account. He still used the same password from college. Messages laying it all out. The penthouse is worth at least $3. 5M. We need to move fast before she changes the will. How long does conservatorship take? Palmer's hands were shaking. Where did you get these? I spent 42 years as a forensic accountant for the FBI, I said calmly. I've traced money through 12 countries and 16 shell corporations. Your Delaware LLC barely qualifies as hiding. Now, here's what's going to happen. I pulled out another piece of paper. You're going to tell my son that I passed your evaluation with flying colors, that I'm completely competent, and then you're going to return his $15,000 retainer and suggest he seek counseling for his gambling addiction instead of trying to steal his mother's house. I could call security. You could. But I've been recording this entire conversation. I held up my smartwatch, and I've already sent a copy to the Washington State Bar Association, the FBI field office, and a very thorough elder advocacy attorney who would love to make you her next crusade. Your choice, Mr. Palmer. Cooperate, or I start making phone calls. He stared at me for a long moment. Then, quietly, what do you want? I want you to walk into that waiting room and tell my son the truth, that his mother is mentally sound, that this was a mistake. And then I want you to think very carefully about your next 17 clients, because I will be watching. Palmer's hand moved toward his phone, and for a second, I thought he might actually try to fight. But then he saw something in my face, the same thing that white-collar criminals always saw right before they took plea deals, and he nodded. And Mr. Palmer, those 3 words you asked me to remember? Apple, table, penny. You forgot to ask me to repeat them. That's sloppy forensics. You should work on that. We walked back to the waiting room together. David stood up immediately, his face full of hope and guilt. Jessica stayed seated, her phone in her hand, probably already composing her next Instagram post about family challenges. David, Palmer said, his voice surprisingly steady, I've completed my evaluation of your mother. She's mentally sharp, fully competent, and shows no signs of cognitive decline. In fact, she's one of the most lucid clients I've ever assessed. David's face collapsed, not with relief, with despair. Jessica's head snapped up. What? But you said, I was mistaken. Palmer cut her off. I'm refunding your retainer. I suggest you focus on other solutions for your financial concerns. He looked at me, and I saw something I'd seen 100 times in interrogation rooms. The moment someone realizes they've been beaten by someone they underestimated. It was lovely to meet you, Mr. Palmer, I said, shaking his hand. I hope we don't meet again. In the car? Nobody spoke. David drove with tears running down his face. Jessica stared out the window, her jaw tight, and I sat in the back, watching Seattle blur past, feeling older than I'd felt in years. When we reached my building, I didn't get out right away. David, I said quietly. How much do you owe? His shoulders shook. Mom, I can't. How much? $850,000. He could barely say it. And the gambling? How long? 3 years. A whisper. I reached forward and put my hand on his shoulder. Your father had the same addiction. Did you know that? He turned around, eyes red. Dad? We almost lost everything when you were 10. The house, the car, my savings. He went to rehab. Twice. It's a disease, sweetheart. And Jessica, I looked at my daughter-in-law, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. She didn't help. She encouraged it, didn't she? David nodded miserably. I'm going to help you, I said. But not with money. Money you didn't earn will destroy you faster than debt ever could. I'm going to help you the right way. I pulled out a business card I'd prepared this days ago for a gambling addiction treatment center in Bellevue. You're going to check in tomorrow. 60 days. Intensive program. And when you come out, we're going to restructure your business, cut your expenses, and build a payment plan. It'll take years, but you can do it. Mom, I can't afford. I'm paying for the treatment. That's it. The rest you do yourself. I opened my door, and Jessica, she finally looked at me. You have a choice. Stay with my son through his recovery, support him, be the partner he needs, or leave now. But if you stay and I ever catch you pushing him toward money, my money, any money that isn't earned honestly, I will make sure everyone who follows you on Instagram knows exactly who you are. And trust me, dear, I'm very thorough. I got out of the car and walked into my building without looking back. That was 6 months ago. David spent 63 days in treatment. Jessica filed for divorce on day 4, citing irreconcilable differences, and moved to Los Angeles to be an executive lifestyle coach. Last I checked, she had 847,000 followers and a pending lawsuit from a client who discovered her coaching credentials were fake. David came out of treatment thinner, quieter, and devastatingly honest. He sold his company for parts, moved into a studio apartment in Fremont, and got a job as a junior accountant at a nonprofit. He makes $48,000 a year. He calls me every Sunday. And last month he made his first payment on his debt, $200. It'll take him decades to pay it all back. But he's doing it himself. Richard Palmer lost his law license in February. The Washington State Bar found 17 victims, recovered $940,000 in stolen funds, and referred the case to federal prosecutors. His trial starts next month. Marcus told me they're pushing for 12 years. As for me, I'm doing something I never expected. The FBI asked me to consult on elder financial abuse cases. Apparently, there's an epidemic of lawyers, caregivers, and family members exploiting older adults, and they need someone who understands both the financial side and the emotional manipulation. Last week, I helped catch a woman who'd stolen $2.4 million from her mother-in-law over 8 years. The week before, a financial advisor who was siphoning money from his elderly clients' retirement accounts. They still call me the calculator, but now it means something different. It means I'm the person who adds up all the little betrayals, all the forged signatures, all the transfers that Mom authorized but doesn't remember, and I calculate exactly how much prison time you're facing. My son asked me last Sunday why I didn't just give him the money, why I let him go through treatment, through bankruptcy, through the humiliation of starting over at 42. I told him the same thing I tell every family member who asks why I'm testifying against their loved one, because I love you enough to let you fail. And because the person you become after you rebuild yourself, that's the person worth being. He didn't understand. Not yet. But he will. The brain is an interesting thing. People think memory is about not forgetting. But sometimes, the most important thing to remember is who you used to be before someone convinced you that you couldn't survive without them. My son remembered. It took 63 days, a destroyed marriage, and the complete collapse of everything he thought made him successful. But he remembered. And me? I remember everything. Every number, every transaction, every lie someone told an elderly person who trusted them. I remember the CEO who stole from his mother's trust fund, the daughter who got power of attorney and sold her father's house while he was in the hospital, the lawyer who convinced 12 families that their parents needed conservators. They all thought I wouldn't notice, thought I was just another confused old woman who couldn't possibly understand modern banking, computers, shell corporations. They forgot that I spent 42 years being underestimated, and every single time, that underestimation was the last mistake they made. My name is Margaret Chen. They used to call me the calculator. They still do.